Welcome everyone to another episode of Dice and Brushes. Today we have issues of Warhammer Imperium magazine premium 76 all the way to 79. Originally, my understanding is that this was supposed to be a 80 issue run. However, as my understanding is that they have extended the run all the way to 90 issues. So we'll be getting a few extra things in the future. But let's wait for the future for that. So let's just focus on the now. In 76, we have Invader ATV. Oh, let's see if I can just add a little bit extra light there. Go try to get that in frame. So you can see the sprue. Oops, let it focus there. There we go. That's part one. And the larger section here. Come in, let's try to get you close but in frame. There we go. There we are. Oops. Might help if we got a little bit more in frame there. Okay. So that's actually a decent size sprue right there. Right, that's for the Invader ATV, aka the Primaris replacement for the attack bike from the Firstborn. But let's get into the ATV itself for this issue. So we got a little bit of basic lore, just like everything else about the unit that you just received. So they normally come with a twin auto boat rifles. In lore, they have an all-terrain suspension. It does not look like it on the model, but they do. You can choose between an onslaught Gatling cannon or a multi-melta on the top section here. And it does, of course, have a Vox array antenna. Oh yes, they show the multi-melta down at the bottom. Let's try to get that a little bit better in frame. All right. Of course, if you're going to do a crusade, we got the battle record here for the Invader ATV. Then we have some beautiful artwork for the Tzeentch Demon's lore. Honestly, I really like the cold color scheme of the purples and the blues that Tzeentch has. I'm just not a fan of the models in general. I'm much more of a Khorne guy, kind of guy. Let's try to get that a little bit better in. Of course, a little bit about the horrors, the Heralds of Tzeentch themselves, the Lords of Change, aka the Greater Demons of Tzeentch. And it even talks about Karios Fateweaver, which is a named Lord of Change. He's actually pretty darn resilient in game, too. Then we have a little bit of lore of Lieutenant Neos. So he's part of the 4th company of, let's see, I don't even know what chapter symbol that is on this shoulder. But Silver Templars, that's it. Silver Templars, but move on from that. It's just a little bit of lore about him. He's not prevalent in the current lore. He's just pretty much a random guy. There's a few spots where he appears, but he's not a big figurehead within the lore. Right, then we go to Lampros Hecaton, Grand Oathkeeper, a chaplain. It goes a little bit about, again, he's of the Silver Templars. Boop. Anytime you see that symbol right there, Silver Templars. Goes a little bit about his duties as a chaplain in general. It's not just to him, it's to all chaplains. It just has a little bit more about him in detail, but not by much, because there's just not that much lore for him or the Silver Templars. We got a little bit about the Sanctus Wall. All right. which is more of a campaign location that Harkon World Claimer of the uh, Black Legion was trying to claim, but the Silver Templars were part of this, if I remember properly. Let me go to a little bit of lore of the Battle of the Narrow, an epilogue for it. But it's just not a very prevalent battle in the lore. People don't constantly talk about this or the Silver Templars. So if you don't know this, I wouldn't worry about it. I barely knew even of it before I got this issue. And of course, we're going to have a how to build your Invader ATV. We are going to have a how to paint your Invader ATV using the paints that you have already received to paint them up as Ultramarines. We have the 9th edition datasheet for the Invader ATVs. A little bit of some photos to identify what's the Onslaught Gatling Cannon versus the Multi-Melta. Because honestly, these types of pictures are nice when you are a new player especially. You just don't know, okay, what's what. So again, just remember this is the 9th edition datasheet. We are currently in 10th edition. You will have to look at what is currently the Space Marines Index on the Warhammer Community website. As of recording, the new Space Marine Codex should come out, I believe, in about a week and a half, I want to say. So of course we are going to have a tutorial on how big guns and how heavy weapons and big guns never tire worked with 9th edition rules and the Invader ATV. If you're playing 9th, go ahead and actually care about this interaction. If you're playing 10th, this no longer applies. And of course, we got the mission, Deep Strike, Necrons vs. Imperium. This is on the veteran mission control nodes. The layout of this is nothing like what you will play in most 10th edition games. So just be aware of that. Of course, this is a little bit skewed for how the towards the Imperium for considering how the Necrons worked in 9th edition, unless you are using the Skopek Destroyers and the, I believe it's the Wraiths, as the mainstay in your force here. But with the stuff that is included, for the most part, this heavily favors the Imperium, unfortunately. Then, next up, we will be getting to my favorite 2 issues of this section. Alright, and here we go for issue number 77. This has the KAC Command Barge / Annihilation Barge. You can assemble it as either. This is just the first part of the sprue. The next part will be in the next issue, of course, because this is a vehicle sprue. Just give a good look at that. Put that to the side. Now you'll notice that I have both a flying stand and a 32mm base for generally infantry. If you choose to assemble it as a Annihilation Barge, then you can take the Overlord, I should say, and put him on the base and run him separately. So while you won't have the same options as you normally would, you still have a fair amount of options in this kit between the 2 sections. I forget if I know it has a war scythe, but I forget if it has a regular staff of light off the top of my head and the other sprue. but we'll put these to the side for the moment regardless. Come on, little beggar. Yeah. Okay. Right, let's crack this open here. Okay, of course, just like usual, we got some basic information about the KAC Command Barge. This is actually a very good HQ in 10th edition right now. And it was pretty good in 9th, but I'd say it's considerably, I think it's considerably better right now. I haven't had a chance to run it, but with an enhancement, I think this could be a very good HQ choice. Let's see, gives you a little bit about a war scythe, the Overlord itself, the Necron crew that are stuck inside of it, as well as the Gauss cannon, which you can also have a I think it's called Tesla cannon underslung as well. You just have to choose between that or the Gauss cannon. It has a quote: "My legions falter. Alert the cryptex. Have them unseal my armory immediately and bring forth my command barge. My underlings are a disappointment once more. It appears I must take to the field personally, lest my phalanxes lose their grip on this world." Of course, we got the battle record if you want to use this as a KAC Command Barge. Then, fluff-wise, what is one of my favorite armies in the entire game, we get a little bit more about Harlequins. Back in late, well, I shouldn't say late, in 8th edition and for most of 9th edition, running a Harlequin army felt like having rabid meth squirrels. It was beautiful. It was fun. But then they took a bunch of nerfs, and it wasn't as fun anymore, and in 10th edition, they got a little bit closer to what they were in early to mid 9th edition, before the heavy nerfs, but still not quite. And now it's a high risk, high reward type of mobile playstyle. It does have an emphasis on assault, but it's a weird kind of assault where you don't quite have the tools for everything that you used to. Anyway, we got an inquisitorial report about the Harlequins, and Harlequins are servants of the Laughing God, but not like Laughing God like you and I would think. Laughing God is in what the Eldar think funny, and they have a particular love for irony. In fact, there's a short story of a death jester over here shooting down an aircraft that was supposed to get a commander off-world and bring hope. He shot it down, and it became a symbol of horror and remorse for everyone on the ground. We got a little bit of lore about the Solitaire here. Nothing too much, just it's only one paragraph, and they really deserve their own page. Now, you can pronounce Kegorak, Kagorak. There's a whole lot of ways to pronounce the Laughing God's name of the Eldar. Oops, let's put it a little bit more in frame here. But ultimately, most people will not try to correct you because, well, almost none of us can pronounce it correctly. My understanding is that the name is supposed to be, or I shouldn't say supposed to be, it's supposed to have Gaelic inspiration to the name of how it's pronounced, but I do not speak Gaelic. I do not understand it. Somebody else is going to have to, who actually speaks Gaelic, is going to have to tell me how to pronounce his name. We have a little bit about Sadith, which is one of their performances that the Harlequins perform, but I'm not going to go too in-depth into that. Not right now. We have a short war story, Obolus and Lyrak. This has a little bit It's basically just Death Guard, and I don't know about the rest of you. Death Guard and Astra Militarum, aka Imperial Guard, those are more of Brett's kind of thing, not mine, so I would rather let him speak to the lore on this story at another time. Then we have The Last Laugh, a short story of Harlequins versus Imperial Guard. It doesn't end well for the Imperial Guard, I'll tell you right now. It's got a half page, 1, 2, 3, so basically 3.5 pages telling you how much destruction Harlequins unleash on primarily Imperial Guard, but it also shows an Imperial Knight as well. Then we have a little bit about Nijal the Stormcaller, High Rune Priest, aka Librarian, of the Space Woofs. Now, the Space Woofs, it's pronounced wolf, but I say woofs just to make fun of them a little bit. They claim that their psychers are not using the warp energy, that they are using the powers of their homeworld, Fenris or something like that. They're using the warp, but they just don't want to say that they are, because they hate psychers and they hate chaos. In fact, Space Wolves are resistant to chaos to some degree. But anyway, Nijal's Stormcaller is actually important in the lore. Highly recommend if you can find a book about him to read that. Lucas the Trickster, I believe I didn't even see him anywhere in the lore until I saw him introduced in, I believe it was the 5th edition Space Wolf Codex, I think it was. 5th or 6th edition, I forget what it was. It's been a while. But he was always kind of fun in game. It's just that he takes a back seat in the lore. Like, he's got good lore himself of what little there is. It's just that he's not prevalent in a lot of stories. Anyway, let's go to how to build your Catacomb Command Barge. Shows you the sub-assemblies, including that of the Overlord. Again, if you want the Overlord by himself, you can just put him on that 32mm base. Right, we got how to build each sub-assembly, how each sub-assembly goes together. And of course, we only have one part of the sprue currently. We'll have to wait until the next issue, which is part of the same pack ultimately, to actually fully assemble this. We have Breach on the Bastion. This is Necrons attacking the Imperials. I'm sorry, no, it's the other way around. Necron defenses from the Imperials. Sorry about that. See, the mission is, of course, breach the tomb. This one is actually pretty fair. It's not too balanced. Well, it's more balanced, but not pushy one way toward the... Sorry about that. My recording software had a 10-minute cutoff there. All right, next up, we have The Spoils of War, which is a multi-page spread out for a campaign that happened. Rogue Trader was partially in charge. I say partially. But he did have Astra Militarum and Raven Guard allies, the chapter of Marines that I am currently playing. It goes about their space battles. It actually has a nice detailed section about how different units moved throughout I'm guessing a hive city? I haven't fully read it, I've only read portions of it. Each one of these green sections is a little bit of lore about each of these positions that is marked on the map, which is very nice. And of course we have some lore about individuals within the Rogue Trader more. Logbook, transmission that they had, captain's account. But highly recommend if you like the Rogue Traders. this is definitely worth the read. I'm not particular on them, so it's not for me, but I am particular about the Raven Guard aspect of this. But without further ado, we will go into issue 78. Okay, and now we have the next part of the sprue. I'm actually going to break this in two. So here is one half, basically the back crescent, along with the main weapon system. These Tesla, I think they're called Tesla Destructors, I want to say. Basically, if you hit your enemy with I believe it's an unmodified 6, then you can get extra hits already. And this sprue is unfortunately bent a bit, but it shouldn't be too bad. See if I can show you on camera how much that is bent one way or the other. I said it's just a little bit. Just from this corner from here to over here is flared up a little tiny bit. But that's something that you can't really avoid when you ship things in the way that these were shipped. They were not in a box or anything like that. Anyway, let's get into the actual magazine itself. Alright, you demon lovers. It's Slaaneshi time. The Prince of Pleasure, the God of Excess, whether it's drinking, sex, drugs, you name it. If you just appreciate art just a little bit too much, Slaanesh is the Chaos Demon for you. Or the Chaos God for you, I should say. We have an inquisitorial report about Slaanesh in general. We have a little bit of lore about the Heralds of Slaanesh. I forget what this model... This picture is actually a model in-game, where a Herald has a man that has been transformed into a harp and is playing the harp, which are his tendons, from his back. And he actually likes that because he is a servant of Slaanesh. With Slaanesh, things can actually get very dark very quickly if you are not careful. That is the whole point of Slaanesh. We have a little bit about Salaxi Hellbane, which is a named greater demon of Khorne, or not Khorne, darn it, named greater demon of Slaanesh, which are keepers of secrets. But Salaxi Hellbane, if I could pronounce the name properly, basically loves just killing greater demons of Khorne. Just finds them, challenges to them to duels just to kill them. Loves doing it. We got a little bit of lore about the basic demonettes. And we got some lore about the basic keepers of secrets. Again, Selexi Hellbane is a named versus the regular. Actually, I wonder if I can get at least a sideways glance at that, because it doesn't make sense at all on the body, which is perfect for chaos. Remember, that is actually a somewhat humanoid body with a whole bunch of stuff going on. I know it's sideways and you can't really see it too well. Let's try to get that back. Then we have the Crystal Heart, a short story of an Inquisitor, his retinue, and I believe, what was it? The Tempestus Scions against a Chaos Cult of Slaanesh. It doesn't really go well for the Imperials again. It really, really does not go well for the Imperials one bit. Then, of course, we are going to go into the how to paint the KAC Command Barge with the paints that you have received so far. And this is actually a good painting tutorial. I'm not one for edge highlighting, but they do it pretty darn well. Let's see. Of course, and then we will get to the KAC Command Barge in its full glory. If you want, if you already have one of these, highly recommend then making it into the Annihilation Barge instead. But if you do not have one of these in your Necron collection, then make this model. Then, of course, we got the 9th edition datasheet for the KAC Command Barge. Again, it was good in 9th, but if you're playing 10th, just get rid of this. Then, of course, we have 9th edition rules for how hovering works with vehicles and movement. This still applies. You start your movement by measuring from the forwardmost part of the hull, and then you end your movement via the forwardmost part of the hull. What people had a tendency to do, and the reason why this had to be a thing, is because people were starting their movement with the front of the hull and ending their movement with the back of the hull, so that the front of the hull at beginning and the back of the hull at the end were 12 inches apart, for example, in this case, because KAC Command Barge has a 12-inch movement. But it's front of the hull to front of the hull at the end. So people were cheating and getting extra movement. Then, of course, we have 9th edition lines of sight rules. Then we have Into the Breach. This is a Imperials attacking Necrons. Battle in the Tomb. This one is a considerably more flavorful of a mission. I wouldn't say it's not the most balanced, but it is fun in the fact that it is flavorful and just being its very nature being a little bit different. Then the last issue we will go to is issue number 79 for today. Okay, and now we have issue number 79 with the first part of Guilliman's sprue. This has his base, his arms, and his legs. It's not a whole lot right now, but it is just his extremities and the base. So with this part, if you had just received this, there are you can get the base done, you can get the legs done, you can get parts of the arms going, but you will not be able to complete them. Not yet. He's a Primarch, he is a larger model. Of course, he's going to be in multiple sprues. Speaking of which, let's give some lore. The sword that Guilliman has is actually the Emperor's sword, which can give demons a true death. Now, normally, if you slay a demon, slay in quotes, then it just goes back to the warp and it could come back to real space sometime later. For example, Angron, when he is killed, he comes back. I think it's 6 day, either 6. I think it's 6 weeks, 6 days, and 6 hours later, right on the dot. But if he were to get killed by the Emperor's sword, it would be a true death. Angron would not come back. So Guilliman, even though he is not the best in combat, he does have the one weapon that can actually kill his demonic brothers. It talks about the Armor of Fate, which is basically both armor and life support system. Tells you a little bit about his Hand of Dominion, which is basically Power Fist with a heavy bolter in it. It calls it the armor his Panoply of War, but don't worry about that. If you're doing a crusade, here's his battle record. Use that if you would like. Some lore about Gilman. Yes, he is, of course, a Primarch, again. So he has quite a bit of lore behind him. In fact, he is very prevalent in the lore, go figure. He's the one who ordered Call to begin the Primaris project to even build this armor should he ever be slain in battle or just simply defeated in battle. He is the one who has been fighting all of his demonic brothers, except for Angron. I don't think he's fought Angron in 40k. I know he did in 30k during the Horus Heresy. But I don't know if he's fought Angron recently. Anyway, I know he's fought Magnus for sure. And he's fought Magnus and Mortarion in the recent lore. Older lore, I know he fought Angron and Lorgar, but I don't know about recent. See, just more about Gilman. He is now the Lord Commander of the Imperium, so he is the almost by default he got that title, and it's basically he is just below the Emperor in terms of authority. A little bit about his Indominus Crusade. We got a little bit of a return to duty, so when he was risen by the Yanari, a little bit about how he's basically processed his return. It's kind of weird to think about from his perspective, and it does write a little bit, not detailed, but a little bit about that. But more so not about the aliens, but about the Imperium that he returned to. So then we go about the Obolus and Lyrak Phase 2 now. So before it was just basically the Imperial Guard versus Death Guard, but now it has a much higher emphasis on the AdMech portion. Also talks about the Grey Knights as well, I should mention. But again, it barely mentions the Grey Knights. The Price of Vengeance. This is a story written for Rogue Trader by Rogue Trader. It depends on how you want to say it. So we'll just skip through here. Transmission from the not the Inquisitors, the Rogue Traders' point of view. Kind of their various mission briefs throughout an entire system of what was going on. How they were planning for a battle in space against Eldar specifically. It even mentions, hey, the Eldar have superior craft to us. Their weapons are actually forward-facing, whereas ours are slow, cumbersome, and fire out the port and bow sides. What would be the left and right. Like, we just can't do the style of void warfare that the Eldar can. But of course we go into a little bit more detail, step by step to make things easier, including boarding actions. Talks about Sloane, Admiral Sloane, which I think Admiral Sloane actually has a miniature, or I might be thinking of another character by a similar name within the Imperial Guard. Within the Imperial Guard range, I think there is a character by the name of Sloane that has that. Anyway, there is also the after action report for it. Fate of Von Hart. I honestly do not know who Von Hart is. But we'll go into how to build Robute Guilliman. Again, really right now, all you'll be able to assemble with the sections that you have are his feet and parts of his arms. You do not have the torso. You do not have the head. Not yet. Anyway, then we have mission Assaulting the Gate. More specifically, it talks about the Imperial forces being the AdMech, the Sisters of Battle, and the Ultramarines, all attacking the Necrons at a Dolmen Gate, which is basically their version of a Webway Gate, or hijacks the Webway Gates. I'm not quite sure which. It depends on who's writing it. Anyway, this is apparently Gilliman's plan himself, so you know in lore it succeeds. And of course, they call it the Hammer Blow. And this mission is, again, very slated for the Imperials, not so much for the Necrons. But it does at least tell you which playmats to use. We have a small advertisement for Noctith Pylon. War for Erasmus isn't over yet. So it has what was originally supposed to be the last issue, or at least I think it was supposed to be the last issue here, showing that you're going to get Gilman Part 2, and then issue 81, you're going to get a Paragon Warsuit for the Sisters of Battle, and a new mission pack. Of course, a build and paint guide for that model, but we'll have to wait for that in the next issues. Until then, as we always say here at Dice and Brushes, get your shit painted.